I'm Elizabeth at A Literary Princess. If you are new here, welcome. I have a PhD in English literature with a focus on Victorian women novelists, and as you might expect, I love to read. Today I have another Jane Austen July video for you, and I will be ranking the 6 main novels of Jane Austen. I was going to do this last year, and then was having trouble deciding on my order. Not the top 3, but the bottom 3. Bottom being relative. What you have to understand is that Jane Austen is my favorite author, jointly with Stephen King. It is much easier to rank Jane Austen's novels than Stephen King's novels. But so all of her novels are 5 stars from me. But which ones do I like more? So I really had to think about this, and it ultimately was my reread of Mansfield Park this year that made me decide on the order. And so I decided, okay, I can do this now. So we will talk about the books, why I'm placing them where I am placing them, and let's jump in. Again, you have to remember that all of these are 5-star reads. So even the one at number 6 is still an amazing book that I love. But, you know, someone has to be at number 6. And that for me is Sense and Sensibility. This is Austen's first novel, published in 1811. And we are following 2 sisters, Marianne and Eleanor Dashwood, as they have to leave their family home after their father's death. Eleanor embodies sense, Marianne embodies sense and sensibility, hence the title. You can probably hear Pippin. He has a lot to say today. So, why is this at number 6? Like I said, I love this. It's a 5-star book. However, I think you can, in a lot of ways, tell, especially compared to her other novels, that this is her first novel. The characterization is not as deep. The plotting is not as intricate and complex. It's still a great book. I love it. But it does not, for me, do quite as much as some of her later books that I adore. Still love it. Still adore it. It's 5 stars. But, you know, again, something has to be at number 6. At number 5, we have Northanger Abbey, published posthumously in 1818. However, it was actually one of her more earlier written novels, and it was actually the first one she ever sent off to publication under the title of Susan. It was bought by a publisher and never published. This is the story of Catherine Morland, a young woman from a large family who is taken by some friends on a trip to Bath, where she meets 2 families, the Thorpes and the Tilneys. And she really likes Gothic novels. And Pippin, that is my camera. Yeah, Catherine Morland really loves Gothic novels a little too much, to the point where she starts thinking that maybe life is like a Gothic novel. In fact, it is not. This actually in the past has been like one of my top 3 Austen books. I first read it in high school and have reread it several times, and I do really love it. Because it's one of her earlier works, I think the humor is a lot sharper. Like, it's kind of mean in some places, compared to something like, say, Persuasion or Mansfield Park. And I kind of love that. However, I think, again, because it is one of her earlier novels, and she is not the one who published it, it was published by her family, so she is not the one that said, yes, I'm going to put this for publication now. I think it is not as polished as some of the later books. And I think also as I get older, I can relate less to Catherine, who is a very young heroine, a very immature heroine, who, you know, goes to a visit at Northanger Abbey and thinks that General Tilney might have murdered his wife. Like, you know, So I just think that this is a case of just as I get older, I relate more to her older, more mature characters and less to kind of the young, immature characters. I still love it as a book, and I do really want to reread it soon, but I have to put it at number 5. At number 4 is actually a book that had historically been my least favorite Jane Austen book until a few years ago. This is Mansfield Park from 1814. Does it say on the back? Yes, it does. Oh my God, it says on the back. This is the story of Fanny Price. She is from a large, not particularly well-off family, and she is sent to live with her much wealthier uncle and aunt and their children, her cousins. And Pippin, stop moving my camera. When a new family, the Crawfords, moved to town, her kind of typical routine is thrown off as flirtations begin, and she is rather unsure what to think about everything going on. So I have read this 3 times. The first time was back in 2014 while I was in undergrad, and I gave it 5 stars, but I didn't really like it that much. I found Fanny to be very dull. I found the book to be kind of dull, and it was my least favorite. I have since read it again twice, once this year since it was a group read, and then in 2023. And in 2023, I realized how much I actually like this book. I have a new appreciation for Fanny as a heroine. Yes, she is quiet. She can be a bit passive, but that is all due to her circumstances. And actually, she has a very strong character. And when she feels that something is wrong, she stands up against it. She will not do what she thinks is wrong. So I really quite have come to like her. The parts that I found boring when I first read it, I actually find fascinating now, particularly their attempt at performing the play Lover's Vows. I've now read Lover's Vows and actually, kind of understand what is going on with that. This is a much more complex novel than either of the other 2 talked about, and even more so than Pride and Prejudice. And I really like that complexity. I like how quiet it is. And it's also, despite being so quiet, it actually has the most scandalous event of any of Jane Austen's main novels, where a married woman runs away with a man who is not her husband. That is the most scandalous thing to happen on screen, on page, like in the events of the story of Jane Austen. We have in other novels some things that happen before the main story starts that we hear about, but even those things I would actually say are not as scandalous, really. Well, maybe there's one other one that might be. I can't quite remember. But this is the most scandalous thing to actually happen in the plot of the book. So I find that very interesting. And fascinating that it's in the book that people kind of consider like her most quiet and kind of boring, although it's not boring, it's really not. So I have come to really appreciate Mansfield Park a lot, and it is sitting at number 4. At number 3 is Emma from 1815. Now, while this is number 3 in like the ranking of my favorites, I actually think that Emma is the best Jane Austen work. I think that the characterization for all of the characters is superb. I think that the plotting and the pacing is basically perfect, and I love it. This is the story of Emma Woodhouse, handsome, clever, and rich, who thinks she knows what's best for everybody, when in reality, she knows nothing. So when she starts to try playing matchmaker, it doesn't go well. I love this book. Jane Austen said of Emma that she was going to write a heroine that nobody other than her would really like. I love Emma because of what a complex character she is and how much she changes over the course of the story. She has the biggest character growth of any of Jane Austen's heroines, and I love that for her. Mr. Knightley is also my favorite love interest in all of Jane Austen because he is just, he's great. Oh my God, I love him. Oh, George Knightley, yes. I truly think this novel is perfection. So even though it is not my absolute favorite, Jane Austen, it is, I think, her best. And I've loved reading it every single time that I've read it. At number 2 is the book that got me into Jane Austen, Pride and Prejudice from 1812. This is many people's favorite Jane Austen. And of course, it is also the book that got, I think, most people into Jane Austen, whether that was through film or reading the book. It was the first Jane Austen film I ever watched. It was the first Jane Austen book I ever read. This is the story of Elizabeth Bennet, one of 5 daughters who really need to make good marriages because their father's estate is entailed and they are going to be left with nothing if he dies. Enter Mr. Darcy, a rich man from outside the neighborhood who is kind of a snob in Elizabeth's opinion, and these two butt heads immediately and then fall in love. Classic, you know? Elizabeth is my favorite Austen heroine. She's just great. She's clever and witty, and yes, she's flawed, but she realizes her mistakes and admits to them, and I feel grows from them. Mr. Darcy goes through the biggest change of any of Austen's heroines, like really big character development there. And I love the story. I love these characters. I would say that this has some of, to me, the funniest side characters in Mr. and Mrs. Bennet, and also in Mr. Collins. And also Lady Catherine de Bourgh. She's awful, and I love her for it. Like, there's just so many great characters in this book, and I love it so much. And I think there is a reason that everybody says that this is the one that you have to read, even though, again, I don't think it's her best one. I think that's Emma. I think this is the most accessible of her books, and it truly holds a special place in my heart for being my first Jane Austen. But my favorite Jane Austen novel is Persuasion, published posthumously in 1818. This is the story of Anne Elliot, who is 27 years old. Years ago, she was asked by Frederick Wentworth to marry him, and she was persuaded by relations to break the engagement. Now he has returned from sea rich, and Anne is still very in love with him, and she is watching as he interacts with other people, and the yearning, guys, the yearning. Oh, this is Austen's most mature work. This is the oldest of her heroines at 27. So old, right? I remember turning 27 and I was like, I'm the same age as Anne Elliot. Life's all downhill from here. Which is not true at all. But in that time, like, you were considered an old maid if you were not married by then. This is the most romantic of Jane Austen's books, the letter from Wentworth to Anne. I've said it before, I will say it again. That is romance. That, there, most romantic thing ever. I had it read at my wedding. That's how much I love this book and that letter. I like Anne a lot as a heroine. She's my second favorite heroine, actually. Again, she's mature, she's very thoughtful. She is quiet. Similar in some ways to Fanny Price from Mansfield Park, but older and has gone through heartbreak and is there, like, therefore just has a different point of view of things. This book is just, it's so beautiful. It is so beautifully written. And there are some great characters in here as well. And just, I love the relationship between Anne and Captain Wentworth. I just truly, truly love it. I think this will probably always be my favorite Jane Austen novel. And probably has been since I first read it, which would have been in like 2012 or 2013. A while ago. But it makes me so incredibly happy. And I don't know, like, makes you believe in love. Like, it really does. Oh my God. You pierce my soul. I am half agony, half hope. Like, it's just beautiful. It's just so beautiful. And that's all I have to say. So that is my ranking of Jane Austen's 6 novels. Could this change over time? Yes. Could it change when I next read Northanger Abbey? Possibly. Because of course, I think to some extent there is like recency bias when trying to decide which of these I like more. Persuasion, Pride and Prejudice, and Emma I think are pretty firmly top 3. I think the bottom 3 could maybe switch around a little bit, although honestly, probably not. But maybe in 3 years or 2 years or even next year, I'll have a video saying, actually guys, here's my real ranking. But as of right now, this is how I rank Jane Austen's novels. Again, they're all 5 stars. I love all of them. So let me know down in the comments, what is your ranking of Jane Austen's novels? Which is your favorite? Which is your least favorite, if there is such a thing as a least favorite Jane Austen novel? And which one do you think is her best one? Because I do think that that is a different thing, favorite versus best. I've talked about that quite a bit recently in regard to Emma. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to see more of my bookish content. It has been great chatting with you. I will see you soon. Bye.